space cybersecurity is no longer an option. It's a necessity. For sovereignty, for resilience, for the future. Global threats are rising. Space is the new battlefield. Are you ready? With more than 60 high-level speakers and experts. Welcome to CYSAT 2025. And let me say it again, welcome to CYSAT 2025. We're glad to be here and gathered for the 5th edition of CYSAT, the event dedicated to cybersecurity for the space industry, proudly organized by CYSAT. Welcome. It has been a year since we last met here in Paris, in the beating heart of the startup French tech. And things have changed, and CYSAT has grown from an annual rendezvous to a worldwide community, with the 2nd edition of CYSAT USA held this spring in Colorado Springs, and the upcoming CYSAT Asia to be held on the 5th of February 2026. It's already time to save the date. But we are back here where it all started to discuss the latest developments and the challenges of a blossoming field yet strategic market. And to achieve our goal, we are glad and honored to rely on the presence of those who shape a safe cyberspace for space. And those are experts and high-level speakers from institutions and agencies at the European level, such as the European Union Agency for the Space Programme, the European Space Agency, the European Commission. But also at the national level, we have the French CNES, and glad also to have among us the Italian Space Agency and the Italian Cybersecurity Agency. You will also get the chance to hear about stakeholders, key players, newcomers, but also installed ones of this blossoming sector. My name is Margot Lucas-Nowatzki. I will be your host for these 2 days, and I'm most glad to be here and welcome you alongside the one and only Director of CYSAT, Mathieu Bailly. You can give him a warm round of applause.
Good morning, Margot. Good morning, everybody. Welcome again to CYSAT 2025, edition number 5. Very happy to be here. We have lots of topics and keynotes and speeches and interactive sessions to cover. It's going to be very busy today.
Indeed, yes. How was it in Colorado Springs before we kick off what will happen here in Paris?
It was great. Thanks again to our friends from the Space CYSAT that helped us to organize this event in Colorado Springs, making CYSAT a global community of professionals working at the forefront of space and cybersecurity. And Paris still remains the main event. We have about 600 people today at Station F. Welcome to everybody. Thanks again for coming. It's a pleasure. It's very important to meet physically, to exchange, to network, to talk to each other, to meet other colleagues. That's the purpose of these 2 days.
Yeah, many things changed from this first remote session you had at CYSAT. Well, what is to expect for this edition, the 5th edition? That is a sold-out event. We must highlight that.
Right. Yeah, it's sold out. We have lots of people here. Very happy to see the success of the event. And in terms of topics, I think we see that the geopolitical context is getting more and more tense, and this is the heart of cybersecurity. Defense will be a big topic at CYSAT. We're going to talk about this morning, also this afternoon on the master stage. On the technical side, I would say that AI is obviously the growing topic. We have the technical sessions in the central room, 2 tracks at CYSAT, and not only, also interactive sessions.
Yes, it is important to note if it's your first time here that the scenery is not complex, yet it is dual as all systems. So that will be the master stage here, but also the central stage on the ground floor. An interactive session that are fully booked, but we still have to mention them, will be held on the junior stage, and I think we can mention those interactive sessions. There will be crisis rooms, but also exercises. So workshops that are organized by Thales is how to hack a satellite. BSI will also have an interactive session on the protection of resilient space systems. Airbus will hold a crisis room entitled Rescue a Space Station in Distress, while Space ISAC will organize a cislunar crisis, and it needs you. Do you want to talk a bit about the presence of academia for this edition?
Yes, also one role we have at CYSAT is to train professionals, to educate them about cybersecurity. That's why we launched a few years ago now the CYSAT Academy that is growing big time. We organize training sessions with experts, also worldwide in Paris today, also in Asia in 2026. That's one of our roles at CYSAT.
What a nice role you're playing. So we've talked about interactive session, but interaction will also happen here on all the stages, the master stage and the central stage, thanks to the app Connects Me. If you have not done it yet, you can download the app Connects Me. It will allow you to find the agendas of these stages, but also to book appointments with experts being present here, and also to have your say in polls and raise your questions. Just to make sure that you master the tool, we will quickly launch a poll to help you get acquainted with the tool. Indeed, we want to know how you arrive here. How did you make your grand entrance to today's event? By car, classic and comfy, public transport, saving the planet one ride at a time, walked or bike, bonus points for steps and stamina, extra bonus point if you came walking with heels. Did you arrive in a rocket ship or beamed by teleportation? And we won't ask for proof. All right. Public transport.
Rocket ship is still a thing.
A rising one.
It's important because we have several speakers that will use this tool during their keynote and their speeches. So please be familiar with it so we can be as interactive as possible.
Yes, and every time there is a session, by the end of the session, sometimes you will be able to ask questions to the speakers and the panelists. And as you can see, it is hard here to raise your hand. But you can pop up your question on the app and we will present it on the screen.
Right, perfect.
Well, I think it is almost time for me to leave the stage, but before doing that, I will thank our sponsors, and these are the European Union Agency for the Space Programme, the European Space Agency, Space ISAC, Thales Alenia Space, Thales, the CNES, Telespazio, Airbus, Wolf SSL, Leaf Space, Gatewatcher, TÜV IT, GMV, Germany's Federal Office for Information Security, Cryptonex Security, Priamos Ground Space, Cyber Inflight, Vision Space, Yogosha, Parsimony, Snowpack, Nexova, iGo, Sanctuary, Disk, IDEL, Trust and Soft, 3IPK, and Innovo. These are also signs of the community CYSAT has been growing into, and we thank you for your support and your presence here. I think it's time for me to leave the stage while you welcome the first speaker.
Right, thank you, Mario. You will be back in no time on the master stage. Time for me to invite our first guest for the opening of this CYSAT 2025 edition. We are very happy to welcome ESA's Director General for the first time at CYSAT. Please give a big round of applause for Mr. Josef Aschbacher, please.
So thank you, Margot. Thank you for this introduction, and very happy to be here. It's my first time, as you said, but I have heard about the meeting, and I have, of course, been briefed by my colleagues. It's a very important gathering. Defense and space are connected much tighter, and this is exactly the occasion and the moment when we have to talk about this to make sure that our assets are secure and safe. And I'm also happy to see some of my good old friends. I've just met again Josef Aschbacher after many years, who used to be my boss, but I hear very deeply involved also in CYSAT, and many of you who are working here and make this event possible. So let me say a couple of words of introduction and also how ESA is related to CYSAT, cybersecurity. We have a very strong activity you will hear later on from Massimo Mercati and some of my colleagues that we are really very much engaged in it, very deeply, and also since a long time, but my experts will really elaborate. But I'm happy to give a few opening remarks to really set the context also from an ESA perspective. So really, first of all, allow me to express both my gratitude and my pride in joining you today to open this edition of CYSAT 2025 here in Paris, which is also home of the ESA headquarters, as maybe not everyone knows, which is the beating heart of Europe's technological ambition and a very symbolic place where we have a shared vision of why we need space for secure, resilient, and sovereign Europe, which is really a stepping stone these days in particular of how we build up our security ambitions, our autonomous resilience in space. We gather, as you know, at a time when history is accelerating or historic events are accelerating. I don't need to explain the geopolitical situation, but today is a very good moment, a very important moment to really focus on security, space, and cybersecurity. Space is no longer just a frontier of science and business. It has become a full-fledged strategic domain and extension of our terrestrial infrastructure, of our communication networks, and our collective security. And in this domain, the threat is silent, invisible, and asymmetric. It manifests through lines of code, radio interferences, software vulnerabilities, and unpatched systems caught in the whirlwind of innovation. Cybersecurity and space can no longer be separated. This realization demands a structured, coordinated, and resolute response. In this growing and shared responsibility, the European Space Agency plays a pioneering, visible, and hands-on role. Our mission is not only to explore space or to observe it, but to secure it. And we translate this mission into action, into infrastructure, and into enforceable standards. And I will come back to you in this to this particular point in a few minutes. To understand why we are gathering here today, we must first take a clear and unflinching look at how profoundly the space domain is changing. What, just 20 years ago, was the exclusive realm of national agencies, great powers, and high-security technologies has now become the invisible yet vital foundation of our modern life. Space is everywhere. In our phones, in our financial systems, in our navigation tools, in global supply chains, really everywhere. It underpins our economies, our democracies, our security, and our daily lives. Whether we acknowledge it or not, we have become satellite civilizations. And while this dependence brings undeniable benefits, it also introduces systemic vulnerabilities. Every satellite, every data link, every ground station is now a potential entry point for an attack, a breach, or a deliberate disruption. These threats are no longer hypothetical. Events in recent months have made this all too clear. Satellite jamming, spoofed signals, attempted intrusions into control systems, and cyber attacks against orbital and ground infrastructure. These attacks are often invisible to the naked eye. They leave no craters, yet they have the power to neutralize strategic capabilities, destabilize economies, or manipulate public opinion on a massive scale. Their sophistication is increasing at an alarming pace. And their perpetrators, whether state-sponsored or non-state, operate from the shadows with motives that may be technical, ideological, or simply disruptive. In this context, space is emerging as the theater of hybrid operations where technological competition, information warfare, and strategic confrontation intersect. This represents a fundamental shift. It is no longer just about securing access to space, as we have proclaimed over the last few decades, but about ensuring the security of space operations themselves. This calls for profound rethinking of space security, not solely at the level of launchers and satellites, but also at the level of digital flows, encryption, protocols, and trusted architectures. Cyberspace and physical space can no longer be treated in isolation. They now form a continuum of vulnerability and, if we structure our responses wisely, a continuum of sovereignty, resilience, and protection. At this point, you might ask, all right, we understand that space has become strategic, connected, and vulnerable. But in practical terms, what are the risks? And what makes space cybersecurity different from traditional cybersecurity? To that, I would like to answer, the space domain is one of the most complex environments to secure because it is hybrid, it is distributed, it is remote, and persistent. It is hybrid because it merges hardware and software, physical and digital, ground infrastructures, and digital assets. It is distributed, relying on multinational architectures, segmented command structures, satellite constellations, and multiple interfaces. It is remote, since most systems operate hundreds of thousands kilometers away with no direct physical access or interventions. And it is persistent because once a satellite is launched, you cannot patch it easily or bring it back to Earth for repair, as we could do with other linked computers. These realities create a set of unprecedented challenges. Beyond that lies the supply chain, a web of contractors, subcontractors, and component manufacturers and providers. Each link can become a breach. We must anticipate, simulate, and build in redundancy, because once damage is done, it is sometimes simply too late to respond. This is why cybersecurity cannot be an afterthought. It must be native, embedded from the very first design phase, tested rigorously, accredited independently through realistic scenarios in a philosophy of cyber resilience by design. This complexity is what makes our work so demanding, and it is what makes an event like CYSAT so essential to our collective progress. So what does the European Space Agency do in this domain? In the face of growing complexity, vulnerability, and hostility, Europe cannot afford improvisation or trial and error. It even bears a historic responsibility to protect its security, its space, its assets, its citizens, and its sovereign capacity for action. And this responsibility, the European Space Agency is now taking on resolutely. In recent years, we have witnessed the emergence of a true European awareness of space cybersecurity. Many initiatives are now converging, but above all, it is through the agency that this ambition is being translated into operational reality. Our role is not to support innovation only. It is to guarantee the robustness, the security, and resilience of Europe's space infrastructure. And we are doing so on several fronts. First, by embedding cybersecurity into every new mission, right from the design phase. At ESA, security is never an afterthought. It is, by design, integrated from the very beginning into the architecture. Second, by building sovereign security infrastructure, this is the very purpose of our investment in ESEC, ESEC being the European Space Security and Education Center located in Belgium and a cornerstone of ESA's cybersecurity strategy. ESEC, and we have the head of ESEC here with us, very glad to see you. ESEC is far more than an operational site. It is a protection ecosystem, a strategic hub for space operation, for secure space operations. It is home to two critical components of our cyber defense architecture. The CSOC, which is the Cyber Security Operations Center, our frontline defense against live cyber threats targeting critical space assets. And the ESCO, the Cyber Security Center of Excellence, a cutting-edge lab for training, expertise, testing, and cooperation in cybersecurity. Today, ESEC is one of the very few sites in Europe that fully complies with the most stringent security standards. It meets the evolving requirements not only of ESA, but also of the European Union's security and defense frameworks. Very happy to see also Rodrigo. It is a site that is operational, strategic, and where Europe's answers to emerging threats are quietly being prepared. At a time when the boundary between civil, defense, and security is becoming increasingly blurred, ESEC represents a Europe capable of mastering its critical infrastructures, protecting them autonomously, and training the talent that will ensure their resilience. But before I conclude, allow me to take this opportunity to share with you a new ESA initiative to address the growing geopolitical challenges and their implications for security and resilience in Europe. My member states have asked me at the last Council in March to initiate a new program and prepare it for decision and subscription at the ESA Ministerial in November this year, but also to prepare it hand in hand with the European Commission, in particular Commissioner Kubilius in charge of space and defense. This initiative responds to a clear and pressing reality. Despite its excellence in civilian Earth observation, Europe still lacks an institutional dual-use space system dedicated to surveillance, intelligence, and situational awareness. Let me be candid. We are no longer merely adapting to crisis, we are preparing. Europe is not just reinforcing its capabilities to negotiate or compete, it is preparing for profound deterioration of the security environment. And space will play a central role in this transformation. This new initiative, called ERS, Europe's Operational Resilience System from Space, is not just another initiative. It is a response, it is also forward-looking, it is a capability, a European vision of strategic resilience. Ladies and gentlemen, we have identified threats, we have shared initiatives, and we have outlined ambitious perspectives. But none of this will matter unless we collectively choose to act, and it is here at CYSAT that this momentum can take shape concretely, durably, and together. Because while space cybersecurity is a technological challenge, it is first and foremost a challenge of governance, of coordination, and of determination. It is not just about having the right tools, it is about speaking the same language, building a shared culture, forging strong alliances, and sharing risk, which we also need to do, and to share knowledge. What we must now build is a Europe of operational trust, a Europe where space, far from being a theater of uncertainty, becomes a space of shared protection. Ladies and gentlemen, we have everything we need to succeed. What we now need is consistency, courage, and coordination. And ESA is ready to play its role to secure our space assets, but also to protect our citizens of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schaber. Please have a seat and also grab a mic so we have a little bit of time for the Q&A. I have some questions from the audience sent to me by my team. Thank you again for being here at CYSAT. It's a great pleasure to have you. Also, a lot of information in your speech. Let me bounce back on a few questions. First of all, ESA is funded by member states. Can you share a bit the perspective of member states regarding cybersecurity? Have you seen this changing over the last few years? What is their voice regarding security? What do they ask ESA in terms of security?
No, thank you. So what is ESA's approach? And you will hear later on from Massimo in much more detail. But we really have changed the way how we handle cybersecurity in ESA. In the past, and I'm now maybe a bit simplifying the language, in the past, cybersecurity was quite often an afterthought once a project was running, once a project was ongoing, and at some point it was said, oh, by the way, we need to include cybersecurity as a key element, and therefore have patched it on or have developed it into it. I'm exaggerating a little bit because this is not completely true, as you can imagine. But what we really have changed, and this is the new strategy since a few years now, actually since I became Director General of ESA 4 years ago, that we have really insisted that cybersecurity is there from the very start, the very beginning in every single project. So if a new project starts, cybersecurity is just as important as defining a sensor specification, the platform size, the size of the satellite, the launcher, and everything else we need to do. But cybersecurity is there right from the beginning as an integrated system. A bit also, as I outlined in the speech, that this is quite a change compared to how it was handled in the past. And I really have to say that I think it is fair to say, and this is what our member states and our stakeholders are telling us, we have a very robust system. I mentioned ESEC, but we have backup systems also in 2 other sites, in Esrin and in ESOC, in Italy and in Germany, ESEC being located in Belgium. And I think we have a very resilient, a very robust system built up. Of course, this is work in progress. I've also increased quite significantly the funding for cybersecurity within ESA context, and I think this really pays off now.
Thank you. Yeah, we see kind of a bit of a shift in ESA's roles, at least from my perspective. ESA was very well known for its institutional science missions, civil programs, and now we see more and more the need to support the member states for their defense efforts. Can you share a bit what is ESA's role behind the vision of Europe becoming more strong in terms of defense and space capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that you may have noticed in some of the public language that you have seen on how ESA is adapting to a new reality. And I really have to say, and I have to say a great thank you to my member states for having really changed attitude, language, and completely the way on where we work and how we work. We had an ESA an ESA council meeting about a month and a half, 2 months ago. We have them every 3 months, 4 times a year. And the language we used there was unimaginable just half a year earlier. Of course, the geopolitical context makes it crystal clear that ESA has to support also in relation with the new commission in charge of space and defense, that ESA also has to really make sure that we support the security of our citizens. Dual use is obviously the key way how space has always been working. Space by nature is dual use, but there the language has completely changed. And as I mentioned also in my speech before, that member states have asked me to develop a new program, and it will be a significant one, together with the European Commission on ensuring some of the activities required to secure our citizens' security, literally, which we did not have today. Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance are the keywords, so we call it ERS, European Resilience from Space system, which is applicable, of course, for security and defense, but also for crisis. In case of flooding, fires, earthquakes, or whatever natural disaster you may have, you need quick information. You don't need a satellite image once a day or twice a day. You need them every half hour, and this is something that Europe will need, also expressed in the Ninisto report, as you might recall, and this is where Europe really now needs to change, in addition, obviously, to the classical way of Copernicus, Galileo, space science, and many other things we are doing.
Yeah, I think you got a lot of people excited in the room mentioning this new program, ERS. I didn't know the official name until today. This will be discussed at the next ministerial. Can you share any details about the timeline, the ambition of this? Is this going to be a constellation? What it will look like? Any details you can...
Yeah, it's all a work in progress. So as we speak, my teams are discussing with the various stakeholders, both in the security domain with the European Commission. I have the next meeting with Commissioner Kubilius next Monday to really, again, together prepare it. But in short, it will be a program that will be defined together between the European Commission and the European Space Agency, a bit similar as we have done for Copernicus, as all of you know Copernicus very well, but it is not a Copernicus extension. It will be a new program, a new activity, of course, with a new scope and a new set of requirements we are satisfying. But there's a lot of similarities as well. On one side, we build on existing assets in Europe. There are many satellites in Earth observation, very high-resolution satellites that are extremely powerful, extremely useful. We build on those. We would like the first phase to be really an anchor customer and buy relatively significant volumes of data to help them establish themselves on the market, but also build up the constellations with new satellites they can add to the existing ones. This needs to be in radar, in infrared, and in optical domains for day and night, all-weather capabilities, but also obviously optical for good image analysis. It will bring intelligence into the satellite in terms of AI, pattern recognition, and edge computing in space. Also to shorten times to a center or a crisis control center on the ground. It will certainly be something where initially, after relying on these existing facilities, we need to fill gaps because we need to build up constellation. And filling gaps, we always do it in competition. We will ask European industry to offer their best products, and there we will really go into larger volumes. That means mass production, industrialization will be a key asset to keep prices low and therefore costs limited, and to really build it up. So it is quite an ambitious program. We're at the very first day of doing that. In fact, I used to be also the very first day of building up Copernicus. I have a lot of experience in building up a long program. There will be lots of hurdles and lots of complications and a lot of problems coming from governance to technical issues, believe me. But I'm very convinced that this is what Europe needs, and we have the capability. We can do it. We have the excellence. We have one of the most capable, intelligent, fantastic industries worldwide, especially on Earth observation. We have quite a unique standing, also built up through Copernicus, the Earth Explorers, and similar programs. So we can do it. We have the expertise, but we need to do it. And I think this need to do it is really something that is required now. That means political decisions.
Very great to hear. Also, looking back to the other flagship program Europe is talking about, and especially here at CYSAT last year and this year as well, is IRIS². Can you explain or share a bit the role of ESA in this IRIS² constellation?
Yeah. I should have mentioned, Mathieu, IRIS², of course, is a backbone and is part of this future system. So it really is a system of systems. So if I focused on the Earth observation part, this is the observing element that is required, which we do not have today, at least in a larger constellation. But we will certainly rely also on the national assets. But of course, everything needs to be securely communicated, meaning Iris Square, when ready, will be the backbone for secure communication. Until then, obviously, we rely on what we have. GovSatcom will become available by this year. So this will be a geostationary-based secure communication system. We have also commercial systems, OneWeb and O3B, as you know, offered by Eutelsat and SES. And this will certainly be built up together in this system architecture. The other element is also navigation. We have LEO PNT, which we are developing right now. We will launch the first satellite at the end of this year. And certainly very high resolution, very precise localization, so PNT, position and navigation and timing will be part of the system, again, in a system of system approach. So really this goes hand in hand with the other elements. There might be in future also RF monitoring becoming an element. You can imagine why. This is extremely crucial. But as I say, we are defining it as we speak. We have a joint task force between the European Commission, which I created with Commissioner Kubilius just a month ago. And we have teams in ESA and teams in the Commission that are now working as one team to build it together up. If I mention ERS as the name for Europe, this is the ESA name as a program proposal, but this is exactly what the European Commission has expressed as EOGS, the Earth Observation Government Services or Government Service, and this is what is one and the same activity. So that means the ERS investments of ESA will become part of the future EOGS, and this is one and the same activity. And the EOGS expectedly will be funded at the next MFF starting in 28. But we are actually quite lucky, if I may say, that we have a ministerial now, so Europe can act quickly and really start building up capacities, as I said, hand in hand with our member states always, but also with the European Commission.
Last question on my side. We have many startups here at CYSAT on the open platform exhibiting, showing up their products and services. ESA is a big supporter of innovation, supporting financially and technically startups to develop their products and services. This will be also the case with cybersecurity. And we also had announces previously that offensive security will be also allowed on future missions that will serve as test laboratory in space for offensive security and testing security products. Innovation is also the big role of ESA, including for cybersecurity.
Yeah, innovation is the DNA of ESA. This is what we do. This is what we want to promote, and we are promoting, I think, pretty successfully. All the money which we are getting in the form of subscriptions at the ESA Council in November, or in any ESA agreements which we have, is spent with industry, minus obviously the running costs of ESA. We are building up this capacity with industry, through industry. Of course, we define the frame, we define the programs, we define the requirements, but industry is really carrying out the work. And I have to say, I'm really so proud and so happy to see how good and how innovative our industry is across the board, from satellites to data to services. Europe can really be very proud of the excellence we have. What we need is a little more funding, of course, a little more speed, I should also say. Sometimes we are a bit too slow and a bit too complex, but we're working on all these fronts to really make sure that Europe is stepping up one level in space, and space is becoming today more important than ever.
Thank you. That's the word of the end. Thank you so much, Mr. Aschbacher, for being here today at CYSAT. Thanks a lot. Please.